People die of eating disorders every single day. Eating disorders are the highest mortality rate among mental health disorders. Someone dies of an eating disorder every 52 minutes. The LGBTQ community is at the highest risk for an eating disorder. Anywhere you get very strong, almost defiant and angry reaction that I get from so many boys. And a rumor started among some of the boys that I was on GLP-1s. I think you're allowed to love your body and hate the size of it.
Welcome here. I'm so glad that you're here to have this conversation with me. I'd love to start just by getting a little introduction from you. Tell us your name and what you do.
Hi, thank you for that. I am Debbie Saroufim. I'm a body acceptance coach, which I always really like to clarify. I'm not a body positive coach because people then say, oh, you're a body positive coach. And I'm a body acceptance coach.
Okay.
I believe that there are lots of built-in reasons, systemic reasons that we don't love our body. And so we can learn to accept it even as there are things that we don't like about it. I want you to feel positively. I want you to feel great. And that might not be 100% realistic 100% of the time. And I think acceptance is always possible. So I am a body acceptance coach. That was a very long-winded answer.
I love that. No, I think
title.
it was so good. And it's such a great way, I think, of beginning a conversation about this too, because there is so much confusion between these terms like body acceptance, body positivity. What do those things mean? But also, I think when someone is looking for a provider, when we're looking for support, we want to be really careful with who we're finding and what they're going to coach us in and what they're going to support us in. So it sounds like for you, it's important, just as important for you as a provider to make sure that people understand this is the type of thing that I'm going to be helping you with.
Yeah, I think, my work it's not the sexiest sales pitch because it's not, you're going to feel good about yourself as soon as this is done. As a person who spends my lifetime helping other people find body acceptance, there are still times that I feel bad about my body. Now I know when I feel bad about my body that it actually has nothing to do with my body.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to feel bad. I just think that there are reasons you'll feel bad that have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And I have yet to figure out how to protect us all from that. So in the meantime, can we learn to be okay while we're struggling with some of the stuff that we see?
You said something really interesting where you said the things that can make us, I'm not quoting you perfectly, but something like the things that can make us feel bad about our bodies have nothing to do with us. And you have on your website something that says body image has nothing to do with the way your body looks.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that because I think for a lot of us that could feel pretty counterintuitive.
It's very, very, whenever I say to people body image has nothing to do with what your body looks like, there's always like a very weird question marky sort of expression that comes up. I think so I always say body image has nothing to do with what your body looks like and everything to do with the fact that we live in a culture that tells us that there is a correct, air quote, I'm saying it in case you're just listening, air quote, correct way to have a body. And so when there is a belief that there is just one way to present a body, there is so much room to feel bad about yourself. When the reality is when you take a step back, you're able to say, there's lots of ways to have a body. It's not just one, but it's a real sort of hierarchical system that our culture lives in with bodies. And so I think the way the system is designed, nobody gets to feel good 100% of the time. I think we live in a culture where certain bodies are definitely marginalized and treated differently than others. But I think even if you have one of the more coveted bodies, there is this awareness and this cultural belief that your value is attached to it. And so there's this fear of, well, what if I lose it? Or, when your value is attached to your body, every flaw you can find that you think is a flaw is a moral failing. And so there's so many reasons to hate your body, none of which are your body, right? And everything that has to do with a system that really isn't designed for everybody to thrive.
Yeah. One of the things that that description that you're giving, I think, is beautiful. And one of the things that it makes me think of is how, we talk about how fat phobia is a problem and that there is just systemic discrimination of people who are in larger bodies or in differently abled bodies or that kind of thing. There's so much body discrimination. And I love the point that you're making, which is that body discrimination is going to adversely, in an extreme way, impact people in those bodies. And it is also bad for people even who have sort of the acceptable type body. They're able-bodied or they're in a small body. And it feels so much to me like racism, homophobia, sexism, all of these things that we know, this is bad for the culture in general. And it's going to disproportionately impact these particular people. But it's in everyone's interest to make this better.
100%. And it's so interesting because the deeper I get into this work, the more I become aware of how these body standards are rooted in all the things you're talking about: white supremacy, the patriarchy, colonialism, racism, all of it. And I'm very much a believer in none of us are free until all of us are free. I think it impacts us differently. So an example that I have is, a lot of the fat clients that I work with, they have trouble going to the doctor's office because they just get prescribed a diet. I, growing up, had a very different scenario. Now I'm thin. I've always been thin. I have not always believed I was thin, but I have always been thin looking back. And I had a migraine that lasted like over 6 months in high school. But I was also anorexic. And so they kept giving me all of these tests and they kept giving me all these medications, and nobody ever bothered to ask me if I was eating. And now as a 46-year-old, the first thing I do, like I get a headache, and before I take Tylenol, before I take anything, I go get a snack, whether I'm hungry or not. I'm like, I know I need to eat, even if I'm not hungry. And so this bias, this belief that your body lets us know anything about you, it does hurt people across the board. Now, I got treated much nicer by my doctor as he missed the mark than some of my fat clients do. They're treated much more disrespectfully, but I got treated lovely. I was being given VIP treatment. In fact, the doctor was a friend of my dad's, and his bias completely overlooked what was going on, and I went undiagnosed with my issues. And so it does hurt everyone.
Yeah. And that's so interesting to hear. I didn't know that about you before we had this conversation, but it's so interesting to hear because I have a really similar story to you. When I was in high school, I started having this issue that is called orthostatic hypotension, where it's you stand up and you get dizzy and you're going to pass out. And I had this right around the time, I think it must have been the end of junior year, because we were taking all these tests for college and it was a stressful time. And they're like, you know what, you just have a lot of anxiety. And I remember thinking, I was a high schooler, right? So I'm like, I don't care about these tests. This is not anxiety. But I had no idea that I had an eating disorder at the time. And I finally went to my doctor. And just like your experience, I was treated so lovely, and he completely missed the mark, except that he said to me, the one thing you could try, and I've never said this to any patient before, is go eat some French fries on the way home, because what I needed was sodium. I wasn't eating any fat. I wasn't eating any salt at the time, because at that point in our cultural history, those things were bad. So I wasn't eating them at all. I was eating like a fruit bat. And you know what helped is French fries, chips, and all of these things that I was like, these are bad. I can't eat any of that. And that is what helped. It was these symptoms that were called something else because people don't think to look at. You can have an eating disorder even if you don't look extremely tiny. And I didn't look extremely tiny.
I mean, I think what people forget is fat people have eating disorders. Fat people die of eating disorders every single day. Eating disorders, 1 in 4 diets goes on to become an eating disorder. So think of all of the people that you know who have eating disorders, even if you don't know that they have an eating disorder, just statistically. Think of all the people you know who are on a diet. And then imagine that 1/4 of those people have an eating disorder, whether they realize it or not. Not all of those people are in small bodies. Eating disorders are the highest mortality rate among mental health disorders. Someone dies of an eating disorder every 52 minutes. Those are not all emaciated people.
Yeah.
You can be completely malnourished and in a bigger body.
You're right. And so much could get missed, right? Like the doctor said to me, maybe try go eating some French fries just as like a last out the door comment. And that was the thing. Would he have said that to me if I had been 50 or 100 pounds heavier? Absolutely not. He absolutely would not have.
And he would have missed it.
He would have completely missed it. And I would have missed it. Even at the time, I was like, go eat French fries. That's terrible advice from the doctor.
Yeah,
I'm going to do it because I'm miserable and I can't even drive my mom in to bring me here. But if I had been in a larger body, missed. Never, ever would have come out.
In fact, possibly shamed if you had been eating French fries.
Right. It might have been blamed on the French fries in that case.
Yeah. You're having too much fat and sodium.
Yeah.
You should cut back. Absolutely, 100%. And so I do think it hits everybody across the board. And I don't think that while certain bodies are being marginalized, even if you are in one of the bodies that isn't being marginalized, it is being impacted by this cultural bias that we have this belief of, well, your body looks this way, and so therefore you are blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so it hurts everybody. It hurts everybody differently. And I think that ultimately, in the healing process, what it's going to require is a cultural shift where people with privilege actually have to give up some of the privilege in order to say, hey, this shouldn't be a privilege. Should be something that we're giving everybody.
Yeah. Right. And I think you're right. And it's giving up one kind of privilege, right? But you're also getting this collective healing for that. You know, like I would be so happy to say, you know what? I don't need this extra thing. We all need to be better. Like when we can rise as a group, everybody's ship floats. You know?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, when you think about the anti-racist, it's an anti-racism fight. Yeah. But when you think about the anti-racist fight, like women benefit from like it's such a slow moving process because it's so incremental, but women have benefited from, you know, the fight for Black rights, and trans people have benefited from these are all very interconnected.
Totally.
And so it is very much overlapping. It's political, its bodies are political. There are political reasons that you feel the way you do. There are political reasons that in different times in history, different types of bodies have become more coveted and more popular, what it represents to the culture at that time. I mean, it's so interwoven. I could personally just like get lost in it and just be like, I'm just in here playing in the history. Like I find it really interesting.
Yeah. Well, and before, so we were kind of in like this place where we were talking about a little bit about high school, and I'm about our own histories, and I'm curious because you work right now with teens and tweens, and I remember what it was like to be a teen and a tween, and it was awful at the time. Awful. And when I look at what people are dealing with now, what teens and tweens are dealing with now, I go, this in many ways looks so much harder, or it looks so much different, and I'm curious.
It's so much worse.
Yeah. What would you say that the teens and tweens now are dealing with in terms of diet culture and wellness culture that's different than it was for women our age when we were growing up?
Well, I think the first thing is we have social media. And as a 46-year-old, I can remember pre-social media.
Yeah.
And I can remember the different energy that I had in the world or showing up. I still remember comparing myself to like Cosmopolitan magazines. Yes. There was still airbrushing. There was still all of that. But it was not this like AI created imagery of humans.
Yeah, we were really still taking the little Cosmo quizzes, but there was only one of them.
Yes, exactly. And what scares me is that kids today aren't growing up with sort of that like, oh, well, this is what reality looks like, and then this is social media. They're just being raised on social media. I think the thing that I have actually noticed the most, and it's been consistent across the board, where I've gone to schools and worked with the kids and I'm working with the teens and tweens, the boys are really hurting. Like the
Okay.
boys are hurting. I don't want to say more because who can quantify, but
Wow. So tell me about it. I mean, it sounds like it's so notable to you when
it's
you
so
go into
notable.
the
Well, because I
schools.
think, again, if we look at cultural bias, eating disorders are a girl's disease. Statistically, they actually impact the LGBTQ community. The LGBTQ community is at the highest risk for an eating disorder. Anywhere you get the intersection of what a body is supposed to look like
Yeah.
and ways in which we believe we can control our body, that's just a swamp for an eating
Right.
disorder,
Maybe
right?
the
So
more intersectionality someone has. Yeah.
yes, but we've got, because I think for a long time it was, when we were growing up, it was the Cosmopolitan magazines and stuff like that. And there wasn't as much for men. Social media is providing so much looks maxing for men. I think whenever I come in and talk to a school, there's always girls who come and talk to me afterwards. And they're usually like, this was so, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know. Like, thanks for
Yeah.
opening up the conversation.
Right.
What I want to say I'm never prepared for, but now I'm actually getting prepared for is the very strong, almost defiant and angry reaction that I get from so many boys.
Oh, interesting.
And
So they're angry about what you're
very,
presenting.
very angry about what we're presenting. I've had multiple girls from multiple schools say, I always knew the boys felt this way. I've just never heard them say it out loud before.
And what are they angry about? I'm so curious about this.
There's this real, I get a lot of, ma'am, with no disrespect, you can't tell me that that person is healthy in that size body. I get a lot of, I'm just working out because it makes me feel good. And I'm like, that's fantastic. We have to explore why it makes you feel good as your body's changing, right? We can't, I love and exercise. I'm actually a person who, and we will never know how much of me liking like aerobic like classes has to do with the fact that I was raised on them and sort of taught to enjoy them. But now as a 46-year-old woman, I'm like, let's do it. And I'm, very love the old school stuff, but we'll never get to know how much of that is. And I want kids to be able to question, cause they're like, no, I like seeing my muscles grow. Cool. What about seeing your muscles grow feels so helpful? Because it does feel like it's saving you from something in this culture. You're definitely being fed that information. And so there's just sort of like, there's always really a defensiveness. I'm like, no, ma'am, you don't know why I'm doing this. And I'm honestly always like, no, I don't know why you're doing this. Can you tell me? And then there's almost like an anger behind the explanation.
Well, it's so interesting. So I'm taking in what you're saying, and as a psychologist, right? So anytime that there's defensiveness or anger, that's because something that's important is at risk.
We stirred something
that feels scary to me is happening. And so I think the way that I'm really hearing what you're saying, that a bunch of these young boys, these teens and tweens boys, are feeling defensive about the possibility of body diversity really makes me think, oh my gosh, you're right. The boys are hurting. Because I wouldn't get that defensive if I didn't feel like I had to protect this extremely narrow box of okay. That I only have this very small place where I can be safe. And if you're asking me to push outside of that, then you're asking me to be unsafe. So I have to bark at you, right? I have to defend myself. I have to get you away. And
100%.
I'm sure the experience in the moment for you, terrible. And I wouldn't wish it upon you. But
I know that it means
sad.
I'm hitting a nerve. Like I don't want anybody to feel bad, but I think we're hurting.
Yeah,
and
it's pointing out.
I think that this is when I come to talk to the kids and they have such a strong reaction to me, I'm like, oh, good. We finally have a little insight into where the pain is. We can actually, this is something we can actually work and heal. We can't work and heal towards it if we're not talking about it or don't know it exists.
Yeah, like that defensiveness lets you know that's where to dig.
That's where to dig.
That's where you're having some pain. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I also think this is, when I say not to go backwards, but like to connect it all together. And when I say none of us are free until all of us are free, in a culture that really, like, in a patriarchal culture where the male body is the ideal, and all of these things, even BMI, which has long been discredited as a measure of health is all based on male bodies, European white male bodies to be exact.
Right.
But all of these things, we see the people at the top struggling, right? The people who have these, and these are teenagers. This is probably one of the smaller versions of the body that they're going to have, one of the more muscular.
Right.
You know, this is the time that they will have more time to dedicate
kind of
to this.
The prime.
They're in their prime, and they are struggling. And they're not struggling because their body looks wrong. Yeah. They're struggling because they're being told that their value is based on them maintaining or attaining something that that is fluid and that's going to change and transfer over time. And that's terrifying. That's terrifying for me as a 46-year-old. Like, if that concept had been brought up to me as a 17-year-old, I don't, my brain might have just broken. Like, so these are scary things, you know?
Yeah.
But this is, again, how we get to see this doesn't just hurt fat people. This hurts people across the board when there is a correct way, air quote, correct way to have body. Every body hurts.
Right.
Nobody is free.
It reminds me of that quote, like, hurt people often hurt people. Healed people often try to heal people. And so I can see where you're saying, you know, this hurt is likely to cause more hurt, and it's not someone's fault that they got hurt, but we do want to heal that because it will cause, you know, there's a ripple effect to that too.
100%.
So I want to ask a little bit about kind of the adult woman's experience, because a lot of women, by the time they get to me, and I'm guessing that this is true for you as well, we've tried to love our bodies, and oftentimes we feel like we failed at that too. And so I'm curious, for you, when a woman comes to you who's already tried self-love and they've already tried whatever, and they just feel like the whole framework, none of it works. What would you say to a woman like that who feels like they've failed at all the diets, but they've also failed at loving themselves too?
I mean, that was me for the majority of my life. Let's be really honest. And I relate to that. The truth is that I don't even think that's limited to women. I've had some middle-aged men come to me with, again, it hurts everybody across the board. But yes, I think this feeling. So I actually always like to take it back to the history, because I think the history of all of this can teach us so much about why we feel the way we feel. And this is, again, why I don't call myself a body positive coach, why I call myself a body acceptance coach. So body positivity was born during the civil rights era. During the civil rights era, a simultaneous and parallel movement popped up called the Fat Liberation Movement. And it was to say fat bodies count just as much as any other bodies. And it was becoming a predominantly white movement. And so because this fat liberation movement was becoming a white movement, body positivity was started by a bunch of women, Black fat activists who were like, hey, we're part of this fight too. We're no less than just because we are Black and fat. And so this movement was always meant to be a movement that recognized we don't treat people the same. There are marginalized bodies. And the reason you feel horrible is because when we marginalize bodies, everybody is at risk, right? And so this was an activist movement. And what has happened, and where so many people feel like they're failing, is, again, social media has come in, and body positivity has really been taken over by women who look like me and you, to be quite honest. Like, we're both in here fighting the fat liberation fight, and we're in thin bodies that are not impacted in the same way. But it's been taken over by a lot of women who look like us, who are there to say, you should love yourself. Your body is amazing. You've earned those tiger stripes. You've got a baby belly, but that's because you're a mom. You're amazing. You should go. And it's not wrong. It's not, you should love your body. I want you to love your body. There's tons of reasons to love your body, but we don't live in a culture that treats all bodies the same. So that, you know, we've got women who are in their 40s who've never had a kid, but have the, like, belly of a woman who
Right.
might have had a baby, and they feel, well, I don't have the reason. Like, my body's not okay. You have the reason. And then, of course, the moms are sitting there feeling like, well, I was told if I did it right, I would get my pre-baby body back. And so I don't have the reason. So again, it's this, we don't treat all bodies the same. And so.
And you mentioned that loving your body can even sometimes mean feeling hate for parts of it.
Yeah, I think you're allowed to love your body and hate the size of it. And I think that there are lots of really great reasons to hate the size of your body, none of which are your body. I think that you can hate the size of your body knowing that we don't treat bodies in this shape and size well. And so this shape and size of my body is what's keeping me from being treated better. That's a reason to be really angry. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. I don't think that a Black person would be villainized for saying, God, my life would be easier if I had white skin. We're also not pushing, well, here, let's bleach you, right? Like that's the difference, right? And so I want, when a Black person knows that they are being treated wrong because of their race, I hope to God that they know that their race isn't the problem, and the culture that treats them differently for their race is the problem. And the truth is, I want them to know the same thing about their bodies, right? Yeah. That the size of your body, you're allowed to be frustrated that you're fat. You're allowed to be pissed that you're fat. You're allowed to be angry that the world doesn't treat fat people the same. And guess what? It's not the fat that's the problem. It's the culture. And so that's really important to me.
It almost feels like that comment, like loving your body can even sometimes look like hating parts of it, is sort of like that hating parts of it is like a directional signal, right? It's like a GPS kind of saying there's more here, because if I explore, why do I hate my belly? Why do I hate my arms? Whatever it is, what I'm going to get is I'm afraid that I'm going to be treated poorly, or I have been treated poorly, or I don't want to be marginalized, or I want to be able to have these privileges that other people have.
Yeah,
and so
which is fair.
Totally. So what I'm hating, in this moment, I feel like I hate my belly or my whatever. And what's really underneath that is I hate the way it's being treated. And one of the things I think is so important in our work, at least for me, is really being able to appropriately direct that hate. As a psychologist, I work with people who hate lots of themselves, lots of things about who we are. And often I find that hate and that anger to be essential. It's just that it's often being turned inward because we feel like, well, if I hate something about myself, I can fix it. If I'm hating something about a system or a culture that's so big and it's hundreds of years old, well, I can't do anything about that. And that then, instead of hating myself, I just feel anxious and I feel frustrated, but impotent, like I can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
And that's a hard feeling too. So sometimes we're actually hating ourselves because we think it's easier to live in self-hate than to live in this culture is messed up and it's incremental little changes to do something about it.
I mean, I think in many ways it is easier. In many ways it's harder, right? It's nothing is black and white, but in many ways it is easier, because if you don't take on the fact that, or the weight, pun intended, if you don't take on the weight of the fact that, wow, it's a broken system, and it goes so far back. And with social media, it's now a worldwide problem.
Yeah.
And there's not a single type of community that isn't impacted as long as they have access to social media and have access to the news and all of that sort of stuff. There's nobody who's not impacted. That's terrifying and scary, and that's painful. That is how that can take you. It doesn't have to, but it can take you to a place of hopelessness where you're like, well, I guess there's just no escape. I'm just going to feel like this for the rest of my life. I believe that I still have a part of me that's like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life. But now I have another part that's like, but the reason you feel this way, it's not your fault. It's not your responsibility. You don't have to fix it.
Yeah. So I want to hear more about that, because you've you've said, and you have on your website, that you always thought that loving your body meant fixing it, kind of meant getting it into, whatever would be the standard. And it sounds like that has changed for you. And I'm curious when that changed, when you kind of realized that loving your body doesn't necessarily mean fixing it.
Yeah, I think, God, I wonder if I could pinpoint. I don't even know if I think it's something I didn't realize was changing about me. The more I got into this work, I mean, the truth is when I first started dabbling in this work, I was more body positive. And I was like, you should just love your body. And then I started listening to people who had real stories of, well, my body is the reason that my doctor won't give me this, or my body is the reason that I was turned down from a job, or, all these sorts of things. And I started to think, wow, that's something to be angry about. That's that's something to be upset about. I've spent so many hours on the therapist's couch talking about the ways in which my parents didn't validate my feelings growing up. And this is something that I can say, well, that's fair. That is fair. And I think that collectively healing comes from being able to grieve what we've lost.
Yeah.
Or feel the pain. There's no way through grief without feeling it. And I, even as a person now who's like, oh, I've learned that I'm allowed to not like every part of my body, and that the reason that I don't like every part of my body is cultural, and there's so much money behind it. I still miss my 25-year-old body, and I'm never going to get that 25-year-old body back. Even if I paid for all of the different procedures, I would still be 46 in this body, and it wouldn't be the same as the 25-year-old body. And there can be grief that's never coming back. I feel that way about my kids. My kids are so cute. They're 9 and 11. I adore them more than anything. I'm so glad I'm not up with a baby anymore, but I miss their little baby tushies. They were just you could gnaw on them. They were so cute. And you can't gnaw on a 9 and 11-year-old's tushy without being completely misunderstood. So, but I miss those little baby tushies. I miss when they would fall asleep on my chest and we'd both be so sweaty that you couldn't really tell who was who. And I love where they are, and I love who they're becoming. And they're so much more complicated and interesting. And
you can really hold both. I grieve something and I'm embracing something. I'm even welcoming something, but that doesn't mean that the grief isn't there. It doesn't mean that we ignore it or push it down. That those two feelings, I love this as a psychologist, I can feel grief and a degree of acceptance and welcome, and even love and joy.
Even excitement for what's to come. I'm so interested to see. My daughter is slow to grow, so she's on growth hormones. And she just started growing. She hasn't really grown in a couple of years. And everybody thinks she's really, really young. And in the past, she's been on growth hormones for almost 2 months. And she's not noticeably taller. But I mean, you wouldn't notice that she's taller, but you can tell her body looks more mature. And she's she's there was a lot of talk actually about the doctor about how the fact that she had gained weight when she wasn't growing. And I was like, I don't think she's going to lose weight. I think she's going to grow, and I think the weight's going to grow. But I'm not prepared to do anything about my kid's weight. I just need her growing because she's be healthy if she's growing. And her body is changing because she's growing. Yeah. And I miss I miss the softer, smaller version. I'm so excited though, as she's growing, I get these, between the fact that she's 11 and gives me these moments of sarcasm and eye rolls, or some jokes that are just really funny, and I'm like, you're a cool person. I'm also seeing her body turn into a slightly more mature body, and I'm like, you're gonna be a really cool adult. Not because her body looks a certain way, but just because as I'm seeing her body change, I'm like, I can see you becoming an adult. And it's so exciting. And when she's an adult, I'm going to miss this. Yeah. And I'm excited to see my kids are going to be so much cooler than I ever had the potential to be. Right. So I'm so excited.
It all exists. So I'm curious, when you think about, you go into schools for work, your kids are in schools, I'm assuming for, their own education. What do you wish that every school counselor, every PE teacher, every health educator, every buddy who's going to be contacting these people, these growing humans at these very vulnerable stages, what do you wish that they understood about body image and diet culture that they currently don't? And I want to be careful. I'm not saying I think anybody's trying to do anything harmful,
No,
but that does
I don't think
happen.
anybody's trying to do anything harmful.
What do you wish these educators could understand that could help them do what they're trying to do, support?
This is an interesting question because this is literally what I come in and teach. Is I teach about how body and health bias is making its way into the classroom. And teachers are always surprised, and there's always an impact. I always get follow-up questions and everything.
Wow.
I think the one big, and different people understand it to different degrees.
Yeah.
I think if I could say schools should do one thing that would help, and I don't know that doing it means everybody who's participating in it would understand, but if schools could do one thing, I wish that schools, teachers, faculty, staff, all of it included, stopped talking about weight loss, stopped talking about if they were good or bad with movement or today.
Oh, you even mean stop talking about it for themselves, not weight loss for students, but if that they would stop
talking
saying,
about it
I'm trying.
On the school premises. Yeah, it is actually not a school appropriate conversation.
Oh,
you
wow,
cannot
that's so interesting.
Make a comment about your own body without accidentally commenting on all of the bodies around you.
Right.
And so
those kids really are sponges, even when they're pretending they're not listening.
We're also normalizing. We're normalizing wanting to fix our bodies versus normalizing accepting, I have a body. No, I wish I could play basketball like you play basketball. That would be awesome. Or no, I don't fit into that desk anymore. Like I used to fit into that desk. I miss the days that I do. We're not normalizing sitting in the discomfort of bodies changing.
Yeah.
I don't think I can control anybody, nor I very much believe in body autonomy. So as much as I'm not on a weight loss journey or anything like that, and I don't teach weight loss at all, I also believe people have the right to do what they want to do, but I wish we would stop normalizing it at school.
That's such an interesting thing too, because one of the things that comes up for me, especially because teachers and school counselors and these, incredible educator adults that students encounter each day, there's this opportunity for modeling, for role modeling, and kids are taking in, this is how I want to be or how I don't want to be or whatever. And it's such a cool opportunity for them to be able to model really interesting things about their lives. In some ways, I think an educator may be sharing about their weight loss journey or whatever is perhaps trying to connect, right? Like trying to be a role model or trying to connect in some kind of way. And there's an opportunity cost if I use that moment to connect, to say weight loss is the most important thing about me, trying to fix my body is the most important thing about me, versus whatever, like my ceramics class, or I went gardening or whatever else,
literally anything else about me. No, I also think, and this is a tough one because we love, like, especially as educators or as parents and role models, we want to compliment our kids. And a compliment on their looks is so easy, but it's also like we've learned to feel good when somebody compliments our looks. The problem with giving compliments on looks is that, again, it attaches someone's worth to that attribute. And so it can become, it doesn't have to, but it can become, well, if you're not getting a compliment, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And so, teachers will comment on, you look so good, you look so fit, you look so this, you look so that, like, you're so tall, you're so pretty, you're so all of these things. We've normalized commenting on people's bodies.
Right.
It's so interesting. And so many of these things are compliments. My sister just had a baby, and she was super pregnant before she had the baby. And my sister-in-law saw her and she was like, oh my gosh, you're so small. When I was that pregnant, I was huge. And I know that my sister-in-law was very self-conscious about being huge. And I know that my sister is very self-conscious about being small. She's been very nervous that it's been a challenging pregnancy. So she's very self-conscious about it. And so my sister-in-law was like, I think I offended your sister. I told her how cute and small she was. Um, and then my mother-in-law was like, yeah, and then I came over and I told her she was cute and small. And she's like, and then we didn't realize she was self-conscious about it. And I said to them, guys, I don't know how else to say, we don't comment on people's bodies. We don't tell them that they've gained weight, but we don't tell them that they've lost weight. We don't tell them that they look bad, but we don't tell them that they look good. We don't comment on bodies because we don't know what we are saying, what nerve we're hitting.
Right. You just don't know what people are going through.
You don't
Even
know.
family, you know, you
Even
just
family.
don't always think, and it changes too. You know, I may be more sensitive on a certain day, like your sister was sensitive because of some concerns that she has or had. And it's so normal that we wouldn't know that, you know? And
Of course not. Why would you know?
Point, right.
And
we should assume there's things I don't know.
It was a lovely compliment. And knowing my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law, I know what they meant by it. I know my sister-in-law was very self-conscious. She was pregnant for forever. Like she went well past her due date and she was just like, I'm not like, I just keep getting bigger.
And also so reasonable for her to have had her own anxieties about that. And to see
her
your
own
sister
anxieties
and say,
and experience.
oh, I hope you're free from that. I hope that you don't feel how I did because I love you. It didn't maybe come across as love, but it sounds like it started as love.
But that's not what she said, right? What she said is, you look so cute, you're so small. And that's a different conversation. And so, and I love my sister-in-law and I love my sister and I love my mother-in-law. Like these are all fabulous people that I adore and will be family with for the rest of my life. So this is not you're a bad person if you do this. It's just a reminder that these simple things that we have normalized are things we can actually work to stop doing to heal.
You're right. Well, and one of the things that I think is an opportunity in this is that if we're saying, okay, don't comment on bodies, I think a lot of people feel like, well, but I want to connect. I want to compliment this person. Like it's love that I'm trying to give. So if you tell me I can't comment on bodies, then I just don't say anything. And I think it feels like a loss. But one of the things that's so clear in this conversation, at least around these particular people, is that your sister-in-law wanted to give love. She's come from her own place, it sounds like, of experience some kind of anxiety, and that she could so easily, she didn't think about it in the moment. She just did what is culturally kind of normative, which is, you look so good, you know, as a way of compliment. But that's almost shorthand for, I hope you're feeling good. I remember that I didn't feel good. And I hope that you are, you know, I hope that there's a chance that you are. And she could have said that.
She could, and she's not a bad person for not saying it. These are things that we have not learned to do, but I would like to I would love to teach the culture that these are things we can do. I very much say, you know, what we're coming at really, when you think about it, from the way you're phrasing it, like my sister-in-law was coming with a question of, how are you feeling? If she had just said, how are you feeling? If she hadn't made it about her body, if it had been, God, at this point in my pregnancy, I was really uncomfortable. I was really self-conscious. How are you? That doesn't even, like, that gives room for my sister to be like, well, I feel great about my body, but you know what I am really self-conscious of is da-da-da-da. Like, it opens up that conversation. I do think if we're worried about, because I understand the fear of like, well, how will I connect? Curiosity. Ask a question. Ask a question about, how are you? What is this experience like for you? How might your experience be different than mine? Because when we come back into that concept of health bias and body bias, it is the assumption that your experience looks a certain way because your body either looks a certain way or because I assume your body means this about you. So it really just opening it up to, what is your experience? This was my experience, but
Right. Saying we don't talk about bodies. Saying we don't talk about bodies isn't the end of the conversation to connect. It is the start of a curious conversation, like a real conversation. Which is even better, you know.
Personally, I think it's way better. And
it's way
there's
more
also
interesting too. It's so much more interesting. Like, how are you? How often do we get asked, like, how are you doing? as a
I
person. Like,
know.
how are you really doing
I know.
versus
And I
this
freak
surface
people
level?
out because I give an
Yeah.
answer where I'm like, yeah, today's been a bit of a challenge. I'm kind of in my head and I'm feeling a little self-conscious. And they're like, oh, yeah, but those are real. Like, that is me connecting with you.
Right. That's how I'm really doing today. Yeah.
Yeah. And today is hard, but yesterday was great. And I'm optimistic for tomorrow. You know, like
Yeah. Yeah. A
that's an
real
answer.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious for you, when you think about this work and kind of when you think about what we're trying to do with bring together different providers, bring together different perspectives, what would you say or what feels exciting about what becomes possible when we do truly do this kind of work in community rather than in isolation, each of us in our own little lanes?
I mean, I think that I get so excited. Sorry, I get so excited. I'm such a nerd. But no, I get really excited because I think, it's one thing to talk about our own bias, but it's
Yeah.
another thing to start to learn to experience it. And you can't experience yourself as having bias until you start to share with people and go, oh, wow, this thing I'm feeling, that's just me.
Yeah.
I assumed everybody was feeling it, but that's just a me thing. What else might be just a me thing? What might be just a them thing? Like, what might they be
Right.
thinking that I have no,
Right.
it's not even on my radar. And
Yeah.
this is where empathy is born, right? Like, this is
Mhm.
where we start to say, you might be having a very different experience than I am. I mean,
Right.
and
We
if
can
even if
learn so much.
we can learn so much. I mean, even I hate to say anything nice about my parents, but like I've done so much time just sort of, tearing them apart on a therapist couch. But I also want to say, like, I'm now able to recognize these were my parents trying to meet my needs. They missed them.
Right.
But from their perspective, it's also probably super frustrating because they're like, I'm doing everything I can possibly think of, and she's not having the reaction that I'm confident she's supposed to be having. And that's their bias, right? Their
Right.
bias is, if I treat her this way, she will like it because. But
Right.
how frustrating for them to have a kid who doesn't respond the way they're expecting or thinking that she should. And it will challenge in them the feeling of, am I bad? Am I wrong? And the truth is that they
Right.
aren't. But instead it creates, because they aren't, but because sitting in the discomfort of, oh, wow, we're just not experiencing this the same, is so uncomfortable. And because our culture has really taught us not to do it, we now have parents and kids. I speak specifically for myself because lots of parents and kids have great relationships, but we have, estranged relationships that are struggling over time.
Yeah.
And I think that even that is sort of like, I've started to have so much more empathy for my mother when I started working in my group space and was working with moms who are trying to help their kids have a healthy relationship with their body. And I'll hear what they say and I'm like, I totally know what you meant. And I know how I would have taken that, but I don't know how your kid took it, because your kid has your own experience. And just sort of like seeing the trial and error that goes into it, the fact that there is so much personal history in all of this. That is where the because when there is no longer one correct way, but not just one correct way, one correct experience, we start to open ourselves up to other people's experiences. And that's where the healing happens.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is so true of having the opportunity to be in community and to see lots of people, and for kids to have lots of role models, their parents, but also other adults and other kids and other ways of being, and to say, there's lots of ways of being okay. There's lots of ways of doing this. Like, I remember growing up and both of my parents were super active. And I am fundamentally a pretty low energy person. I came out that way. I wanted to sit inside and read. And that's just who I've always been. But I remember, to absolutely no fault of their own, but I grew up feeling like I have to compulsively exercise. I didn't have an internal sense of what is too far, because the amount that I thought was appropriate to be active was already so far beyond what I was okay with. And I got lots of injuries being active because I'd already learned the way that I understand how to be active in my body is wrong. because
Right.
this is what, my parents were doing. And that wasn't their fault. That was authentic to who they are
Mm-hmm.
and were. And they were just doing the best for me that they did for themselves. And so it's so important that we are teaching kids not just how to be, but that they have an internal compass,
Yeah.
that they know that there's a lot of validity to their own opinions,
Yeah.
even if their parents or their siblings or whatever, even if they're different from that,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's right either. We've got to explore that. It's got to be a space to explore.
Right. Or that there isn't a right or wrong way to
Yeah,
experience, that it's just different people are going to have different experiences. And
right.
this is yours. And having a different experience than someone else, especially someone that you love or care about, can be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And it being uncomfortable still doesn't mean you're supposed to fix it or change it. It's just,
right.
yeah, it's uncomfortable. I want to have,
Yeah,
they look like they're having a great time. I want to look exactly like that. I
right.
want to have whatever time I assume they're
Right.
having, which is, by the way, very different than whatever, even if they're having a great time, it's a
Right.
different experience, right?
Right.
But like, that's what I want.
Yeah. I
And it can
wish
be
it was fun for
uncomfortable.
me to do what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I wish it was, and it's not. And that's a bummer. We're just different, but that's also kind of
yeah.
exciting because we get to be different, and I'm going to learn about this from you and you're going to learn about this from me, and then we're going to come to each other, tie it all back together with a nice little bow. We're going to come to each other with curiosity and learn about both of these things and both be sort of able to access things that we didn't have access to before.
Right.
Because
Right.
of
And
it.
the
And
more we're
so,
in community, the more we can do that, the more we
yes,
can model. There's so
yes,
many ways to do this. You've got to find
yes,
your way,
yes,
And
100%.
so
So,
I want to finish up with one final question for you, which is because there are people, I believe, looking to get into this space. And it is very nuanced. And I think everybody who's a provider looks back at how they were 10 years ago, things they
yes,
said, and we go,
yeah,
I would do that differently, or I understand my place in this movement differently than I understood it
hmm
then. And certainly that's going to be different in another 10 years too. But
I
right
know.
now,
I don't want to come back and listen to this interview in 10 years from now. I'm going to be like, oh, Debbie, oh, Debbie.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious with the wisdom and the experience that you have accumulated over this period of time, what would you say to a thin, able-bodied white woman who's coming into this space, who wants to do this work, who wants to lift up other people, but she's not sure that she belongs in the conversation because it is a
Yeah.
question mark? What would you
Yeah.
say is the right posture for someone who says, I want to be uplifting and
I
I
mean,
want to make sure I'm not hurting people?
yeah.
Where
I
do we
mean,
do that?
I think that, that was me for such a long time is I
All of
really
us,
wanted to
yeah.
be in the fat liberation space. And then I was scared because I was like, well, I'm thin. How do I go into community of fat people? I believe that affinity groups are important. I believe that fat people having spaces where there's only fat people is important in the same way, like
Absolutely.
to have that connection and
Right.
that shared
It's important
experience.
to know when you're not supposed to be a part of a conversation. It's
Right.
not about
And
you, and you
it's
don't need
not
to put
about
yourself in
me.
them.
Yeah, I think the hardest, I think the hardest and most important thing to do, and it's hard to do because first of all, privilege is, we're all blind to our own privilege until we lose it or
Mm.
until we're in a space where it is jeopardized, because otherwise
Mhm.
it just feels like the experience and you
Right.
don't
It's just, this is how
realize
it is. Yeah.
that it's privilege. But I think that if you are a thin provider, because there's lots of thin providers in this space, and I'm all for it. I think if you're saying the right, if you're teaching the correct and if you're teaching the correct information, then the story is right. Again, our body is not indicative of anything about us. But I
Hmm.
do think that thin providers, and this is sort of like my big thing, because this is where I get frustrated, is I think as thin providers, we have to acknowledge the
Yeah.
privilege that we have to say what
Yes.
we are saying and not be written off as not knowing what we're talking about or not being healthy or just justifying or glorifying obesity because we are thin.
Right. Right.
And
And
that
there's a
is,
context to what we might say. Yeah.
yes. And so I think that for me, the big thing is, yes, step into those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Those spaces need, like, the movement needs allies. This doesn't this movement doesn't happen by the oppressed people fighting for their own freedom. This happens from people who have more freedom sacrificing and stepping into that space and putting themselves on the line, but also acknowledge the privilege that you have, because we have to, otherwise it becomes body positivity. It becomes what body positivity has become, not what body positivity was intended to be. And remember, body positivity was born out of the civil rights movement. It was meant to say our bodies are not all treated the same, but women like me have stepped into the space, and now it's like everybody's worthy of love, which is totally true, but not everybody's like, it's not accessible to get it, right? So I think if you are a thin provider and you're looking to get into the space, acknowledge the privilege that you might get to speak on stages that a fat provider won't get to speak on, and people might listen to you because you're thin, and that's messed up. But also, that's a privilege, and take advantage and use it, but never stop recognizing it as a privilege.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting thing too, because it is complicated. Like the first point that you made, which is recognize that there are spaces that aren't for or about you, and keep your butt out of them. They're not 100%. Yours. And that's so important. I think it's such an important point, especially for white people, that we have to recognize when there are conversations that are not for or about us, and give those the respect and the space that they need. And I think these other pieces are so important too. Acknowledge your privilege, use it. And also, I think, right, to add, like, and bring people with you. You know, if we allow the narrative to continue to be, well, you'll receive, you know, this body, so I'll use my space. Bring people with you to say, this isn't a solo narrative. You know, we're not going to keep it this way. You know, I will continue to do this work very much alongside and with other people. Yeah. It's so important to be able to do that, because it's all of what we talked about. You know, it's so interesting. This whole conversation has been going to, you know, when one person steps up, we bring the rest up. You step up, we bring the rest up. You step up, we bring the rest up. It's not every person for themselves. It's not, well, there's some affected groups and there's some not affected groups. It really is a shift to, we're in this together, but we all bring different things, and we've got to find what those are. Yeah. And I think, like, just to tie it back as well to this hurts everybody across the board. So I have stepped into I went to a school at one point, and the kids had a strong reaction, which they always do, to me being there. And then a rumor started, I was told, because I'm still working with the school and still doing stuff with the school. And a rumor started among some of the boys that I was on GLP-1s. And this is a reminder that this hurts people across the board, because suddenly, and I have privilege, and I'm here speaking about this privilege, and I even acknowledge it when I talk to the kids. I'm like, look, I'm a thin person talking to you about fat body acceptance